The story begins aboard an energy company's space station, where a secret experiment called Project Rampage is underway. The scientists are testing a dangerous genetic formula on a lab rat, but suddenly, the creature mutates and goes completely out of control. Within minutes, the rat tears through the station and kills almost the entire crew. The only survivor left is Dr. Atkins. She rushes toward an escape pod, hoping to get out before the station falls apart, but the pod is locked. Then a voice comes through the comms. "We'll only open the gate if you go back to the lab and safely recover every DNA sample canister." Atkins has no choice, so she heads back into the destroyed lab and quickly grabs the 3 sample canisters, stuffing them into a bag. But right then, the mutated rat comes charging straight at her. Atkins barely escapes and manages to launch herself away from the station just seconds before the entire place explodes in space. But as her escape craft enters Earth's orbit, it suddenly blows apart too. Now the DNA samples are heading straight toward Earth. Meanwhile, down in San Diego, we meet Davis Okoye. He works at a wildlife sanctuary and is one of the best primatologists around. His job is training and caring for gorillas. That same day, the sanctuary has brought in a young gorilla named Bavo, who was rescued from poachers by Davis's team. Bavo is nervous and aggressive at first, but Davis slowly calms him down and gets him under control. That's when George shows up. George is an extremely rare albino gorilla, possibly the last of his kind. But unlike most gorillas, George is incredibly intelligent and surprisingly funny. One of the new workers, Connor, gets terrified after seeing Bavo because it's his first day at the sanctuary. Davis tells him to stay calm and not move, but Connor panics and starts running away. The moment he runs, Bavo loses control and chases after him. Just as Bavo is about to attack Connor, George suddenly jumps in and saves him. But instead of calming things down, George starts teasing Connor even more because he thinks it's funny. Davis instantly realizes George is just joking around. Using sign language, Davis tells George, "Connor is new here, so he's scared of you." Then he points toward Bavo and explains that the baby gorilla lost his entire family to poachers. He tells George that Bavo needs someone to protect him, someone to treat him like family. George understands everything, and after a moment, he quietly agrees. Later that night, pieces of the destroyed spacecraft begin crashing all across Earth, and hidden inside the wreckage are the 3 dangerous DNA canisters. One of the canisters lands right inside the wildlife sanctuary. When George goes over to inspect it, the container suddenly releases a strange green gas, infecting him instantly. The second canister crashes near a pack of wolves, infecting one of them, and the third lands deep inside a national park, where an American crocodile gets exposed to the gas. This creature will later become known as Lizzie. The next morning, Davis arrives at the zoo, where Nelson urgently tells him that George has been acting extremely aggressive and somehow ended up inside a grizzly bear cave. Hearing this shocks Davis, because grizzly bears are among the deadliest predators on Earth. But when they finally enter the cave, they freeze in disbelief. The grizzly bear is dead, and George is just sitting there beside the body. Nelson immediately reaches for his gun, but Davis stops him because George hates firearms. Davis slowly walks closer and uses sign language to calm him down. "It's me, your friend, Davis." Then he asks, "Did you do this?" George explains that the bear attacked him first, so he fought back and killed it. But the moment George steps outside the cave, Davis realizes something is terribly wrong. George has grown much bigger overnight. Davis manages to calm him down, and George quietly goes back into the cave. But then Connor suddenly calls them and tells them to come to the gorilla area immediately. When they arrive, they discover the exact spot where the mysterious canister had crashed. Connor explains that during the morning patrol, they found burned leaves and some strange metallic object lying there. Davis pulls the object out of the ground, but none of them recognize what it is, so he places it into a bag, not realizing this small discovery is connected to something far more dangerous than they could ever imagine. Then the movie takes us to Chicago, where we meet the CEOs of the energy company, Energen, Brett and Claire Wyden. The two are siblings, and they were the ones who secretly started Project Rampage for one reason only: money. Brett is furious because their space mission has failed completely, but Claire calms him down and explains that before the explosion, Dr. Atkins successfully escaped with the DNA samples. Even though her spacecraft crashed, the sample canisters were designed to survive any impact. and according to the latest reports, something like a meteor has already crashed down in Wyoming. So now, all they need to do is recover the samples before anyone else finds them. Claire believes those samples are worth billions, but Brett is worried. He says if somebody discovers the truth first, they're finished, because they never created this experiment to help humanity. They created it to make money. Claire then says they'll send Burke to recover the samples. Burke is the leader of a heavily armed private military force, and he handles all of the company's dirty work. The moment Burke receives Claire's message, he and his men immediately board a helicopter and head toward Wyoming. Meanwhile, in Los Angeles, we meet Dr. Kate Caldwell. Kate used to work for Energen 2 years earlier as a geneticist. That morning, while getting ready, she sees a news report about the destroyed Energen spacecraft. The report says that part of the wreckage crashed near a wildlife sanctuary in San Diego, and ever since then, one of the gorillas there has mysteriously disappeared. The second Kate hears that, she immediately leaves for San Diego because she already knows exactly what happened to that gorilla. At the same time, Burke and his team arrive in Wyoming, where the second canister crashed. But when Burke inspects the area, he realizes the container is badly damaged. He quickly video calls Claire and Brett. "We found the canister, but it's completely destroyed." Then he reveals something even worse. Every wolf in the area has been slaughtered. The moment Claire hears this, she realizes one of the wolves must have been infected by the mutagen. So she gives Burke a direct order. "I want that wolf dead or alive." Back in San Diego, Davis has secretly hidden George inside his own facility. Not even animal control knows where he is. Davis runs several tests on George to figure out what's happening to his body. The results shock everyone. Something inside George's DNA has changed, causing his growth rate to increase at an impossible speed. And somehow, despite all these mutations, George is still alive. Nelson warns Davis that George is becoming more aggressive by the hour and says they can't keep him there much longer. Animal control is already asking questions about where George disappeared to, but Davis refuses to hand him over. If they find him, they'll kill him, and I'm not letting that happen. George himself seems to realize that the strange canister caused all of this. That's when Kate finally arrives. She introduces herself and tells Davis that she's a geneticist who worked at Energen and she needs the sample immediately. But Davis refuses to hand it over. Instead, he asks, "What did this thing do to my friend?" Kate hesitates and says she can't reveal details about Energen's classified experiments. So Davis tells her to leave, but before going, Kate warns him. George is evolving rapidly. His strength, speed, and agility have already doubled, and his aggression levels are increasing too, which normally doesn't happen in gorillas. Hearing this, Davis finally takes Kate to see George, and the moment she sees him, she's stunned. Davis explains that just the night before, George weighed around 550 pounds, but by morning, he had grown to nearly 2,200 pounds. Kate is even more shocked when she sees George communicating with Davis using sign language. Davis casually tells her, "Yeah, he can talk with signs, and right now, he's hungry." He orders food for George, then looks back at Kate and says, "Last night, he killed a grizzly bear. Now tell me the truth. What exactly is happening to him?" Kate finally decides to explain everything. She reveals that the experiment was created using CRISPR, an advanced form of genetic editing that combines DNA from different species to create entirely new traits. Then she explains, "We mixed shark DNA into the mutagen first, because sharks never stop growing. After that, we added genes from blue whales, beetles, and cheetahs. That's why George has become so powerful enough to kill a grizzly bear." Then Kate says something even more important. "I might be the only person who can save him." She explains that she designed a genetic system capable of rapidly rewriting damaged DNA at the cellular level, and if it works, they may still be able to cure George. But before they can continue, George suddenly becomes furious from hunger and frustration, and moments later, he starts violently tearing apart the cage. Kate is almost crushed beneath the collapsing cage, but Davis quickly pulls her out of the way and saves her. He immediately tells everyone to run. George completely loses control and smashes through every gate in his path before escaping outside. Davis tries to stop him, but George refuses to listen and storms out into the streets. The moment people see a giant gorilla running through the city, panic spreads everywhere. Crowds start screaming and running, while George tears through cars and buildings in confusion and rage. Davis carefully approaches him, trying to calm him down before things get worse. But then the police arrive. The officers prepare to open fire on George, but Davis quickly steps in front of them and shouts, "I'm a gorilla specialist. Put your guns down. I can handle this." Seeing Davis communicate with the gorilla shocks the officers, and they slowly lower their weapons. Amazingly, George begins calming down too. But before Davis can fully control the situation, a military helicopter suddenly appears overhead. They fire multiple tranquilizer darts into George. Within moments, the massive gorilla finally collapses unconscious, and seeing George lying there helpless completely breaks Davis. Meanwhile, out in the forests of Wyoming, Burke and his team continue searching for the infected wolf. Eventually, they spot it in the distance, moving unbelievably fast through the trees. Burke takes a shot, and the wolf suddenly disappears into the woods. Thinking they wounded it, the entire team lands their helicopter and heads into the forest to track it down. Back in Chicago, Brett and Claire are watching the whole mission through live camera feeds. As Burke's team follows the tracks, they realize something terrifying. The footprints are enormous. Whatever that wolf has become, it's way bigger than before. Then suddenly, they hear movement nearby, and out of nowhere, the giant wolf attacks. The creature tears through Burke's men one by one with brutal speed. Watching this unfold, Claire realizes the truth immediately. The mutagen has fully transformed the animal. At this point, killing it won't be easy anymore. Terrified, Burke desperately calls for the helicopter to come back and extract him. But before he can escape, the wolf attacks him too. Burke runs for his life through the forest, while the helicopter finally arrives overhead and opens fire on the creature. But the bullets barely affect it. The giant wolf suddenly sprints forward and leaps directly onto the helicopter. The impact completely destroys it mid-air. Burke freezes in absolute fear after seeing the monster survive all of that. But seconds later, the wolf attacks and kills him too. Back in custody, Davis and Kate are arrested by a special government agency for hiding information about George. That's when the agency's leader, Harvey Russell, arrives. Davis immediately warns him, "I need to see George, and if you're transporting him on a plane, then you're making a huge mistake." But Russell ignores the warning. Instead, he forces both Davis and Kate onto the same aircraft, carrying George. Soon, the military plane takes off. George is locked inside a massive reinforced cage and is still unconscious from the tranquilizers. While watching him, Davis notices something strange. Earlier, when George escaped from the zoo, his hand had been badly injured, but now the wound is already completely healed. Kate explains, "We also combined the mutagen with genes from an American spiny mouse because its DNA allows wounds to heal incredibly fast." A few moments later, Russell approaches them. By now, he has already dug through Davis's entire background. He says, "You're a primate specialist, and you also used to serve in the military. But strangely, all records of your missions were erased." Davis angrily cuts him off. "Forget my past and listen to me. Bringing George onto this plane was a massive mistake." Russell calmly replies, "He's fully sedated. We have him under control." But Kate immediately disagrees. "The way George is evolving, these sedatives will stop working soon. By the time this plane lands, it'll already be too late." Even then, Russell refuses to believe her. Instead, he says, "So your science experiment isn't the only monster running around?" Davis looks confused. "There's another one." Russell then shows them footage of the giant wolf. Seeing the video shocks Davis. He asks Russell, "Who exactly do you work for?" Russell responds, "I work for a government agency that handles scientific disasters. When experiments go wrong, my job is to clean them up, and that means this gorilla dies." Davis immediately argues back, "We can still save George. Kate worked for Energen, and she created a device that can repair his DNA." But Russell reveals the truth. 2 years ago, she got fired from the company after being caught stealing a hard drive. She also spent 13 months in prison. Hearing this completely stuns Davis, because Kate lied to him. Russell walks away, leaving the two alone. Kate quietly apologizes. "I'm sorry, I lied to you." Davis looks at her and asks only one thing, "Just tell me the truth. Can you save George or not?" After a long pause, Kate finally answers, "No, I can't." Then the movie cuts back to Brett and Claire, who have now learned that a government agency captured the gorilla and loaded him onto a military plane. Claire pulls Brett aside and reveals her real plan. She explains that every animal infected by the canisters now carries their engineered DNA, and because of that, they can all be controlled using a special low-frequency radio signal. Claire says their engineers have modified the company's antenna into a massive transmitter. Now all they have to do is activate the signal. Once it's turned on, every infected creature will be drawn toward the tower, destroying everything in their path. Then the military will kill the monsters for them, and Energen will recover the mutated DNA and sell it for billions. After explaining the plan, Claire activates the antenna. Immediately, powerful radio waves begin spreading across the country. The giant wolf hears the signal. Lizzie the crocodile senses it too, and high above the clouds, George suddenly reacts as well. His eyes snap open. The signal instantly sends him into a violent rage. George smashes apart the entire cage and breaks free inside the aircraft. Russell immediately orders his men to kill him. The soldiers open fire from every direction, but the bullets only make George angrier. He starts attacking everyone inside the plane. Meanwhile, Davis and Kate are still tied up. Davis somehow frees himself and grabs a tranquilizer gun, hoping to calm George down before things get worse. At the same time, Russell keeps firing at George. George suddenly grabs Russell and is just about to crush him to death, but Davis stops him at the last second. Even though he hates doing it, Davis prepares to inject George with another tranquilizer. But right then, one of the agents panics and opens fire again. George completely loses control once more and throws Russell across the aircraft. As George attacks the soldier, the gunfire accidentally hits several explosive crates stored inside the plane. A massive explosion rips through the cabin. Fire spreads everywhere. And to make things even worse, the pilots are already dead from the earlier chaos. Now the entire aircraft is going down. George starts moving toward Davis and Kate again, but the two manage to drop a heavy machine onto him, slowing him down for a moment. That's when Davis spots parachutes nearby. He and Kate quickly put them on. Russell is still alive too, so Davis decides to save him as well. Davis opens the aircraft door while Kate jumps safely out with her parachute. Then Davis drags the unconscious Russell toward the exit and straps a parachute onto him. Just before falling, Russell wakes up and Davis deploys his parachute. All three of them survive, but George is still trapped inside the burning aircraft. Moments later, the plane crashes into the ground in a gigantic explosion. Davis watches the wreckage in shock. He truly believes George is dead, and for the first time, he looks completely broken. Later, they search through the crash site, looking for George's body, but he's gone. Instead, they find enormous footprints leading north. Russell tells Davis, "There's no signal out here. I'm gonna search the area and see if I can find a radio." Then he looks at Davis seriously and says, "And when people find out your gorilla survived that crash, both of you are going to have a lot of questions to answer." Before leaving, Russell quietly thanks Davis for saving his life. Back in Chicago, the FBI arrives at Energen headquarters because they suspect the company was responsible for the dangerous experiments. Agents begin searching the entire lab. But to protect herself, Claire shifts all the blame onto Kate. She tells the FBI, "We're currently reviewing Dr. Caldwell's files because, unfortunately, we only recently discovered the kind of dangerous experiments she had been conducting in our labs." Meanwhile, Davis is furious at Kate for lying to him. So he tells her, "You lied to me for your own reasons. That's what humans do." Kate looks at him and asks, "Why do you hate people so much?" Davis quietly answers, "I've fought in wars all around the world, and after what I've seen, I know exactly what people are capable of. They'll do anything to get what they want." Kate responds softly, "Not everyone is the same." After a moment of silence, Davis tells her the truth about George. He explains that when his rescue team first found George, the baby gorilla was hiding underneath a poacher's truck, and nearby, the poachers were cutting apart George's mother to sell her body for money. A rare albino gorilla would have been worth a fortune on the black market. There was no way baby George would have survived alone, so Davis took him in and raised him himself. Kate then asks, "What happened to the poachers?" Davis looks at her coldly and says, "I killed every one of them." Then he walks away, but Kate follows him and quietly says, "You know, it's a good thing George doesn't think about humans the same way you do. After what happened to his mother, he should have lost all trust in people, but somehow, he still trusts you." Kate finally tells Davis her full story. She explains that after college, she started using CRISPR technology to help save endangered animals from extinction. But then her younger brother became seriously ill. Doctors told her there was almost no chance he would survive. Kate believed CRISPR could save him. That's when she met Claire Wyden, the CEO of Energen, who hired her as the company's lead genetic researcher. But there was one thing Kate didn't realize at first. Every time she created a breakthrough that could help cure her brother, Energen secretly used that research to create dangerous genetic weapons. Once Kate discovered the truth, she tried destroying all the samples herself, but security caught her before she could do it. Then the company framed her for stealing research data, which sent her to prison for 13 months. And just 1 month after she went to jail, her brother died. She never even got the chance to see him one last time. Holding back tears, Kate says, "That's why I can't let Claire hurt anyone else." After hearing everything, Davis finally forgives her. For the first time, the two truly begin trusting each other. Right then, a helicopter arrives to pick them up. They're taken to an Air Force base, where military commanders are preparing an attack against the giant gorilla and wolf. By now, both creatures are only a few miles away from Chicago. While studying the situation, Davis notices something strange. He tells the commanders, normally, wolves and gorillas would never run in the same direction together. The colonel looks confused and asks Russell, "Who exactly are these people?" Russell replies, "He's the gorilla's trainer." That answer only makes the colonel angrier. This is a military operation, but Russell explains that nobody understands these creatures better than Davis and Kate. Davis then tells them something important. These aren't normal animals anymore. If they were, they'd attack each other on sight. Instead, both of them are moving in a straight line toward the exact same location. The colonel asks why they're heading for Chicago. Kate finally reveals the truth. Energen's antenna is broadcasting a signal that's pulling the creatures toward the city. That's why Davis warns them. You need to evacuate Chicago immediately. Bombs won't stop these things. But the colonel refuses to listen. At that moment, he receives a message from the FBI. Then he turns toward Davis and Kate. The FBI wants both of you detained for questioning. Several officers immediately escort them outside. As they're being taken away, Kate quietly tells Davis, "The military attacks won't slow them down for long. We have to get to Chicago ourselves." So the two decide to escape. A pair of commandos tries stopping them, but Davis quickly knocks both of them unconscious. Now they need a helicopter without guards nearby. Kate says there should be one parked near the base hospital. The two sneak across the facility and finally reach the helicopter. But just then, Russell appears. At first, Davis thinks Russell came to stop them, so he quickly says, "You saw what George did to that plane. These people still don't understand what we're dealing with. We're the only ones who can fix this." Then Kate explains that Claire would never create a weapon she couldn't control, which means Energen must have developed an antidote for the mutagen. After hearing that, Russell finally decides to help them. He hands over the helicopter keys and says, "If we're exposing Energen, then I'm in." Moments later, Davis and Kate take off for Chicago. Meanwhile, the military launches a massive assault against George and the giant wolf, but the creatures barely slow down. Instead, they destroy helicopters, tanks, and entire squads of soldiers with terrifying ease. Seeing his forces getting wiped out, the colonel finally orders a full evacuation of Chicago. Russell quickly informs Davis about the situation. Soon, Davis and Kate arrive in the city, where terrified civilians are already fleeing the streets. But then George and the wolf finally enter Chicago. The two monsters charge through the city, smashing everything in their path as they head toward Energen headquarters. Military helicopters and tanks are completely destroyed, trying to stop them. While Davis and Kate move toward the building, they suddenly notice something massive moving through the river toward the city. It's Lizzie, the gigantic mutated crocodile, rises from the water and crawls into Chicago. The moment the colonel sees the creature, he panics and orders the entire military to fire at it. But nothing works. Lizzie tears through everything around her like it's nothing. Now all three monsters are heading toward the tower together, destroying the entire city block by block. Completely desperate, the colonel authorizes the military's most powerful bomb to wipe them out. At the same time, Russell also heads toward Chicago to help Davis and Kate. Meanwhile, Davis and Kate finally reach the Energen building, but the lab entrance is locked. Right then, Russell calls them and warns, "In 30 minutes, the military is going to drop a tactical bomb on the city. So whatever you're planning, do it fast." Without wasting another second, Davis smashes through the lab entrance. Then he and Kate rush inside, desperately searching for the antidote before time runs out. Meanwhile, Brett and Claire begin packing everything they can before escaping the city. But while monitoring the building cameras, Claire suddenly realizes that Kate has broken into the lab. Inside the facility, Davis and Kate finally manage to find the antidote. Kate quickly extracts 3 doses, but before they can leave, Claire suddenly walks in. She tells them, "This antidote isn't a cure. It can't return the animals to their normal size. It only stops their growth and reduces their aggression." Then Claire demands the antidotes back. But before handing them over, Kate secretly hides 1 dose for herself and gives Claire only 2. Claire orders both of them to come with her and leave the building, but Davis refuses. Without hesitation, Claire shoots him. Davis drops to the floor, pretending to be dead. Believing she killed him, Claire forces Kate to leave with her. At that exact moment, the 3 giant monsters finally reach the Energen tower and begin climbing the building. Claire rushes toward a helicopter on the rooftop, hoping to escape, but suddenly, George appears. He smashes the helicopter apart before it can take off. The wrecked helicopter starts crashing directly toward Kate, but at the last second, Davis jumps in and saves her. Kate is shocked to see that he's still alive. Then she quickly tells him, "I still have 1 antidote." Davis immediately comes up with a plan. If they can give the antidote to George, maybe he'll calm down enough to fight the other creatures. The problem is, they have no idea how to make him take it. Then Claire suddenly appears again and points a gun at them. That's when Davis gets an idea. He calls out loudly to George, getting his attention. At the same time, Kate secretly slips the antidote into Claire's purse. Then she shoves Claire directly toward George. George grabs her instantly and swallows her whole. Now the antidote is inside him. Meanwhile, Brett is desperately trying to escape the collapsing building. But before he can leave, Russell finally catches up to him. Russell says, "I'm here to arrest you, so if you want any chance of surviving this, hand over the laptop containing all of Energen's data." Terrified, Brett immediately gives him the laptop. But the moment Brett steps outside, a massive piece of debris crashes down on him, killing him instantly. Back on the rooftop, Kate tells Davis that the antidote needs around 10 minutes before it fully works. At the same time, the remaining monsters continue climbing higher and higher toward them, and now the entire building is beginning to collapse. Kate panics because she has no idea how they're supposed to escape, but then Davis notices the damaged helicopter nearby. Its tail is destroyed, but the rotors still work. He tells Kate, "If we can just keep this thing slightly above the tower, then when the building falls, we'll survive over the top of it." As the skyscraper slowly starts collapsing, Davis carefully lifts the helicopter just enough to stay above the debris, and somehow the two of them survive. But after escaping, they realize something terrifying. There are still civilians trapped inside the city. If the military drops the tactical bomb now, thousands of innocent people will die. At that moment, George emerges from the rubble. The antidote has started working. His rage is finally under control again. But seconds later, the wolf and Lizzie crawl out from the destruction too. Davis quickly grabs weapons and explosives from a nearby military jeep. Then he tells Kate to drive off and stop the military strike before it's too late. Meanwhile, Davis and George team up to fight the monsters together. But both Lizzie and the wolf immediately attack George at the same time. While fighting, Davis suddenly comes up with a plan to kill the wolf. He purposely taunts the creature and gets it to charge straight toward him. At the very last second, Davis dives out of the way, and charging from behind him comes Lizzie. The giant crocodile bites down on the wolf's neck with incredible force and rips its head completely off. At the same time, Kate reaches Russell and tells him, "The antidote worked. Davis and George are holding the monsters back, but there are still civilians trapped in the city. We have to stop the military strike." Russell immediately contacts the colonel and orders him to cancel the bombing mission, but the colonel refuses to listen. Meanwhile, George and Davis continue fighting together against the giant crocodile, but Lizzie is unbelievably dangerous. The monster suddenly charges straight at Davis. Davis barely escapes and starts running for his life, but he trips and falls to the ground. The crocodile lunges toward him, ready to kill him, but at the last second, George jumps in and brutally attacks the creature to save Davis. From a satellite feed, the colonel watches the entire battle unfold in real time. Lizzie quickly recovers and grabs George in her jaws, crushing him with terrifying force. Seeing his friend in danger, Davis desperately throws every explosive he has directly into the crocodile's ear. A massive explosion erupts inside the creature's head. For a moment, Davis thinks the monster is finally dead, but somehow, Lizzie still survives. The crocodile immediately turns and charges toward Davis again. Just before it reaches him, George rushes in and saves him once more. But Lizzie smashes George across the battlefield, sending him crashing into a massive metal rod. The impact badly injures him. Seeing George weaken, the crocodile slowly moves in to finish him off. Davis refuses to let that happen. To distract the monster, he grabs a nearby helicopter and attacks Lizzie with it. The plan works. The crocodile turns away from George and starts chasing Davis instead. Davis throws every remaining explosive at the creature, causing another gigantic blast. But even that barely slows it down. Lizzie bites down on the helicopter and hurls it away like a toy. Luckily, Davis jumps out just in time. But now the crocodile is charging straight toward him for the final attack. And just as it's about to kill him, George suddenly appears behind it, holding the massive metal rod. With one final burst of strength, George drives the rod straight through the crocodile's eye and out the other side of its skull. Lizzie finally collapses dead. Watching all of this happen, the colonel finally realizes the truth. George isn't the enemy anymore, so he immediately aborts the bombing mission. After the battle, George is badly wounded. He slowly walks away from the destruction and collapses onto the ground. Davis rushes over to him and quietly says, "You saved saved my life." The moment he says that, George stops moving. Davis thinks his best friend is dead. Completely heartbroken, he breaks down in tears. A few moments later, Russell and Kate arrive too, and seeing George lying there affects them deeply as well. Davis looks at Kate and says, "He saved me." Kate gently replies, "He saved everyone." But then, they suddenly notice George move his hand slightly. That's when they realize something. George is pretending. A second later, the giant gorilla opens his eyes and starts teasing Davis again like always. George was joking the whole time. Everyone bursts out laughing in relief, and in the end, the group begins helping rescue the remaining survivors trapped across the destroyed city. And honestly, George proved that even in a world full of monsters, loyalty and friendship can still save lives. If you enjoyed this recap, make sure to subscribe and share this video with someone who'd love this insane adventure too.